This is the Skin Science Podcast. I'm Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, and here we'll investigate everything skin science and dissect it from a scientific perspective, analyze it from a medical perspective, critique it from a consumer perspective, and give insight from an industry perspective.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined here again by Mr. Jeff Bedard. We're going to continue our conversation on what it takes to bring topical products to the market. And also we have Dr. Brian Jones in the room.
Hello again.
And we have the Peanut Gallery, Dr. Jose Maldonado. We have Alan and Seti, who I'm not going to say the last name so you don't stalk them. And then we have Ndashe. All right, as I did before, here is the puzzle for today. This is another karakuri, which is from Japan. This one I'm actually going to solve because it's super easy. I mean, if I give it to somebody, they probably would not be able to solve it right away. But this symbol right here, I don't know if you can see that, it actually is a Japanese word that I forgot what it means, but something along the lines of open here this way or something like that. And so, do you know what that means, Seti?
Oh, yasu.
What does it mean?
Yasu means kind of like resting, and also a cheap would be that.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means. But
it's
anyway,
not pressing. It doesn't mean pressing.
Well, actually, what it's supposed to tell you is that this symbol here, if you go like that, is how you open it, because it's like how you crack an egg.
Right. That's so.
And then there's a little wooden chick right there. Anyway, this is one of the ones that is super. It's really cool to look at, but it's not super complicated. But I give it to most people because I don't want them to break my other ones, and this one is not as bad. But anyway, that's one of my favorite to look at on display. I think it's called the broken egg or something like that. Anyway, let's get going into our topic. But this time we're going to talk less about the business side, which is very, very interesting. But we're going to talk more about the research and development side. And so when you say research and development or R&D, based on whatever industry you're talking about, there's many different kind of facets or nuances to that term. There's different ways you can think about it. So for instance, a skincare company that is really just a product company where they're just trying to crank out products that people will buy, research and development there is very different than like a pharmaceutical company who's actually trying to identify a novel receptor on a cell or a novel drug. And so, Brian, how much experience do you have in R&D?
I guess 27 years.
That's quite a lot of years.
At least in regard to skincare.
Okay, well, kind of tell me like the range of kind of roles you've played and that are considered research and development, because there's probably a pretty broad.
Well, it started in '95, and that was actually in product safety and really looking at different ways and looking at how keratinocytes, skin cells, essentially responded to ingredients and what genes were activated in those particular exposures. So both mainly for safety purposes, but also for efficacy purposes.
So that would be considered research.
That was research, absolutely.
But also some development, because you want to find things to avoid, right? So you're
things you want to have, and products or ingredients that actually work well with skin, and those that you want to avoid that react negatively towards skin.
Right. And when you were doing that research, I'm assuming that you were looking at ingredients that other manufacturers used in topicals.
Absolutely. So there's only a certain number of suppliers that fill in most of the ingredients for, again, a majority of the companies, cosmetic companies. And so you're kind of limited for the most part for those unless you have new innovation. And again, probably 80% of the work that you do is on ingredients that a supplier is providing to everybody, or at least offering to everybody, and whoever gets it and tries to use it first gets the first chance at it.
So you can get exclusivity sometimes,
exactly.
Or there's going to be ingredients out there that many people have. If you're not a big manufacturer, you're not going to get exclusivity.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, the reality is, once a raw material is out there and ingredients out there and it becomes well known, everybody's going to try to get their hands on it.
That's right. Or recreate it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin C is a great example of that. There's tons of them out there.
Yeah, so you just mentioned one that is like not notorious but famous, I guess you'd say, in topicals, vitamin C, but that's a very generic term. there's a whole lot of forms of vitamin C, and there's a lot of people.
Conjugations, yeah.
I'm sorry.
All sorts of conjugations as towards vitamin C for building
Conjugations meaning forms and slapping different molecules
to make
together.
them stable
Yeah.
and able to.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I think a lot of people that are just consumers don't really realize is that people will use a generic term like a vitamin C on a label, but the thing is there's a lot of forms, some of them that will fall apart even before you get them, some of them that are stable, but the research they're claiming for vitamin C is not necessarily the research that was done with that particular form of vitamin C. And it's been around for decades and decades at this point. So most of the forms that are have been studied in some form or fashion, at least in a petri dish. But the new ones are the ones where, because you see a lot of kind of new brands coming out with, specific like special molecules, and the question is, have they been vetted well enough, or is it just marketing, and does it really matter? Because frankly, most of what we want to work is, does it moisturize, does it lift, does it hydrate, does it help us to reduce pigmentation? And so there's only certain things you need to have happen there. So let's talk about the word innovation though, because that's we'll get back to R&D, but innovation, because you threw that word out there. Okay. What is your definition of innovation? Because you can really take a couple of different,
Yeah, I mean, innovation as I see research too, you can take a great scientist like both of you are and say, go solve for a disease state. And you guys will sit down and you'll think about all the possibilities of how to address that disease state. And so many of the products, whether they're drugs or topicals, treat a symptom but don't get to the root cause. So research is really where you want to end up. Are you looking to cure a disease, or are you looking to reduce the symptoms of that disease? And skincare, in a lot of ways, is reducing the symptoms and not necessarily creating the cure. Now, other ways that I think about research is by happenstance. Dermatology is full of products that were in other areas of treatment that end up in skin or in dermatology. Minoxidil is a perfect example of that.
That's
right. And really even with Botox. So I happen to know the gentleman that was smart enough to patent migraine use patent for migraines, and it was because he was injecting a doctor Dr. Binder in Los Angeles was injecting his cosmetic patients, and a couple of them started coming in saying, hey, I don't know if this is relevant, but I don't get migraines anymore since I've started seeing you. And he went, aha, something's going on there, and rushed to a patent attorney and ended up selling that back to Allergan for like $40 million.
Okay, lesson learned.
So research can take all sorts of different paths. At Crown specifically, we don't have a ton to invest in new molecule development, or we haven't assembled a team that said, go cure psoriasis, for example. But what you bring to the table through Xycrobe and what we do in innovation in terms of research is taking a disease state and seeing how we can make it better. And that sometimes is in the delivery vehicle, sometimes it's in concentrations, but we're not really a new molecule development research organization, but there's lots of them out there.
Right, and I think one of the misconceptions is that you have to create a new molecule to solve an issue. It's not true. Like you said, it's first understanding what the root of the condition is and knowing whether or not you have something already in your bag of tricks that can address that. One kind of low-hanging fruit is for eczema. We know that we're starting to learn now that eczema isn't just Staph aureus related. It's not just a compromised barrier, but it's also a lack of certain microbes. And so now that we're learning more about the disease states because of better technology, better testing methods, we can actually start to address it even with the ingredients that we currently have. So innovation, in my opinion, is not always just finding a new molecule or finding a new anything. It can be a new way to skin the cat, right? It's not just a mousetrap. It's building a better mousetrap. It's not reinventing, I don't know how to. Okay, that analogy fell flat. Anyway, but I think everybody would agree that innovation can come in better packaging. It can come in, I would say, even in better marketing.
Well, a good example of innovation is, let's take an ingredient that has a bad odor to it. So that innovation could be simply not changing how it impacts the skin, but it is how the consumer will use it.
Right.
And so the worst thing you can do is have a great product that nobody wants to use because it smells bad, feels bad. So innovation can come in a lot of different ways.
I agree 100%. And I think that is where, sometimes people get tripped up, especially with topicals, because we know that in different verticals, like for instance, in a consumer line of products, if you're going to the store and you have a wrinkle cream and you buy it, let's say for $70, and you open it up and it smells like it went rancid, nobody's going to buy that. It can, now that being said, if for some reason it gets a reputation that it works miracles, they would buy it. Now,
Yes.
I would say they would buy it. Now, that being said, even if you are brand new to the market, if it smells bad, if a physician endorses it and you're in a physician's office and they're selling it to the patient, they're more likely to use it, even if they normally wouldn't, because the physician has endorsed it and they trust the physician. Because there's examples of that. There's stuff on the market for 20 plus years now that smells, and to this day people say it smells horrendous. I think they fixed it, right?
Well, it still smells.
Okay.
I mean, not as bad as it used to, but
Yeah.
I know which product you're talking about.
And so there's kind of this philosophical differentiation where marketers will say that smells bad, so I'm not going to sell it. And then others will say it doesn't matter if it smells bad if it works. And so kind of where do you sit in that, or do you kind of just let your own people battle that out?
Well, I mean, look, there are people that to this day believe that medicine has to taste bad to work, right? So that's, I grew up with, the generation where I used to have to take castor oil for my, a spoonful a day. And my mom would always say, hey, it's good for you. And I was like, well, if it's good for me, I don't want it. It's not good enough. But look, at the end of the day, you can have the greatest product, the greatest innovation, but if nobody uses it, you have nothing. So you have to balance the acceptability with the efficacy. Now, having said that, if something cures cancer or is a world-changing product and it tastes terrible, I guarantee you everybody's going to take it no matter what. But when in the skincare industry, specifically what we do every day, if you don't have a product that feels good, smells good, and leaves the skin the way that the patient or consumer wants it, you can have the greatest product and nobody will use it.
Yeah, but we just talked about that one that doesn't smell good, and people do use it. And not only that, it's probably the most expensive topical.
I would say it's gone up in price quite a bit.
So people not only use it, they'll pay a huge amount of money for it. So how does that reconcile?
But I think that goes back to your story that if it's recommended by a dermatologist and positioned in such
Sure.
a way, that's really making the difference that I think for that particular product we're speaking of.
But is that a true across the board? Like maybe that's a one-off, right?
Well, I think if you're, and I know the product you're talking about too.
You don't want to say
it. If you're a next generation, so you're going in and competing against that, it's going to be hard to make inroads unless you have an innovation that's a better mousetrap, so to speak. But it goes to the point, which is true, and so many physicians sell products out of their practice, or a patient comes in and pays for that visit. The stickiness of their recommendation is extremely high. So every R&D, so research is what's new, development is making what's new better in my mind. That development piece should always be focused on what's the step change for what's already on the market. And look, if you can't solve the texture or feel or viscosity of a product, but it does have results, then you're going to have a consumer that uses it.
Right. So let's see. Why don't we discuss all of the research, product testing, and product development that went into developing the Xycrobe technology, which I'm not sure if we've even used that word on the podcast before.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Well,
so
I might have broken that seal, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a bad. We own the word. So, but that's basically Xycrobe is. It's the name of a company I started back in 2014, and then it was acquired by Crown. That's how I came into the Crown family. And the word itself was something I made up mostly because I couldn't find a URL with anything else, so I had to come up with a crazy word. But the idea is that the XY at the beginning signifies human genetics because the XY chromosome, and then microbes. So we were putting human genetics into microbes, so Xycrobe was the word that came up.
Very innovative.
Right, I agree.
Good job.
I agree.
like
and now, one of the things is we're working on some of that technology. We're going to be launching it quite soon. I don't want to. This probably won't come out before it might, so I'm not going to say too much. But we are going to have. I'm just going to say it. We're going to have products on the market in the next month or so, and so it's going to be very exciting for me personally, but I think for the company as a whole. Because we brought this to the world from the ground up. It was from the concept, all the research, all the development, all the everything. And so I think that's probably the first thing Crown, and correct me if I'm wrong, has done that with.
Absolutely. And by the way, you did the heavy lifting before we brought you into the family. So 90% of that work's been done. We just kind of helped you get to the last 10%. But look, this is innovation. In my mind, this is probably the most significant innovation in topical skincare since Retin-A launched many decades ago. This is going to be a game changer, and we're excited about it.
And I love hearing that, and not just for my own ego, but because as a scientist, I don't know if all scientists feel this way, but I have a certain degree of diffidence in the things that I do as whenever something good happens, you're like, I think I must have done that wrong. Let's recheck it, And so, I've always kind of been that way because science, I admire people like Watson and Crick and not all these scientists that won Nobel Prizes discover it because they're just that much of a genius. Sometimes they just fall onto it. They just falls in their lap. And I think Watson and Crick, if you've ever read The Double Helix, have you read that?
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. Go ahead.
Well, I recommend that anybody read The Double Helix because not only is it a great story, but the writing is entertaining. It's a good book. It's not very long. I believe
only
it was
from a geneticist, right? Only from a geneticist.
But it's written by one of the two, Watson and Crick, and it's the story of kind of how the DNA molecule was discovered. And it was kind of not their discovery. Mm-hmm. They kind of absconded that and won the Nobel Prize, even though it was actually a female that should have gotten that Nobel Prize, who actually gave them pretty much in their lap what it was. And so, that book is really great. But I look at those people and I admire them. But I think to myself, anything that I discover can't be a discovery. There's no way that I'm smart enough to actually do this. And so it's always very... when I heard like James Layden when he on one of our first podcasts, when he was so complimentary towards our science, it's always for all of us involved, very, very validating. And I think once we get on the market, we're all very nervous about the reception because it's like putting your baby in kindergarten or maybe your dog in a dog show or something. I don't know.
Some type of pageant or something like that.
And we know that the science is spot on. We know that the products, we love them, and we think that they people have told us that they love them. But there's always those haters out there. There's always the people that just want to cause trouble, and you're never going to please everybody. And so I think one thing about research and development, especially with the Xycrobe technology or even Blue Lizard or Strivectin, is that you're never going to find a demographic that even one product is everybody's going to love. And so what do you do? Do you try to please everybody, or what do you do?
It goes to to what you just said. Every baby's ugly, but in the parent's eye, it's never as ugly as somebody else thinks it is. And look, a lot of the competition, jealousy, however, scientists would be jealous. Competitors don't want to be left behind in a new segment. So you just have to stay true to your ideology of putting the best product forward. Anytime you bring new science to a market, there's a heavy lift in education. And the hardest people to educate, and I have huge respect for the practice of medicine, but there's a feeling that doctors know everything when they graduate med school, and some of them are not receptive to a new way to think about a lot of things. So in particular, the microbiome, the skin biome, I can probably guarantee you there's not a lot of time spent in med school and in specifically dermatology residency learning about the biome of the skin. It's probably brushed over, and maybe it's a 20-minute lecture once in the 3 years. So, this is going to be a heavy lift for us just from the science side because it's counterintuitive, right?
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we've invested so much already in putting together collateral for the physicians. The podcast was actually started because we wanted to start educating on the philosophies that we were seeing emerging in skin science and making sure that we could try to digest it from a technical level down to a consumer level. I feel it's very important because we need to make sure that not just the physician understands these things, but also consumers can get some sort of grasp. We're not advocating that consumers self-diagnose or anything like that, but consumers do. There's a lot of marketing out there that is kind of predatory, in my opinion. And I think it's wise for a consumer to not just buy into something because Instagram says, because I don't know if everybody's seen those Instagram ads where they put the cream on their face and then the little chia seeds show up on their face and then they wipe it off and they have a blur filter. And you're like, it's so obvious that it is doctored, but you know that they would not put those up if people did not buy it because they're like desperate to get rid of their blackheads and such. And the whole, remember those foot patches that people would put on and then you get
silver nitrate and everything. Yeah, they turn black.
And they'd say it's because the toxins are leaving your body. And you're like, that is such BS. Yeah. But it's like people, they're willing to try things because I don't know what it is that just dupes people. I mean, I even sometimes buy into some stuff that I'm like, I'm pretty sure it doesn't work. But
well, I think you gave me one that.
But did it work?
It did work.
Let's tell them about that really quick because I think that's worth you mentioning.
So, look, I've suffered with kidney stones for many, many years and had lithotripsy and surgery a couple times to get those out. And I was complaining and running to the restroom quite frequently. And you were kind enough to do a little research and found a medical doctor, I think in the UK or France, I can't remember which, that basically has this waxy block that you put in a belt and wear, and supposedly it cures the kidney stones. And I've had it now for 4 months, and I'll say that I'm massively improved, and I have no reason to believe why other than maybe it's psychosomatic. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, really, I was as shocked as Jeff that it worked. Frankly, it was one of those things where it's like when you look at how to get rid of kidney stones, it's a little shocking, and that's not a pun intended, but I was a little bit like, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to have to go through that because there's a lot of side effects like ED and stuff that can possibly happen. And so I found this, and it was pretty holistic in its approach. And I was like, it's only 160 pounds. It's worth a try. It's probably BS, and it seems like maybe it works. So it's we don't know how it works. We have theories, but we think maybe it's blood flow related or something.
Knows?
But hey, whatever. So with skincare sometimes, and we've said that in other podcasts where we've said like there are certain gimmicks with skincare, like the rollers and stuff that at a certain point, if it makes you feel good, if it makes you feel like better about yourself, there's a value to it, even if there's nothing proprietary about it, even if it's gimmicky in a sense, as long as it does something to help you, whether it's quality of life or self-esteem, there's value there. Now, that being said, we're not a company that typically goes for the placebo effect. We're really trying to move the needle when it comes to skin science. We're not going to say that, for instance, when we have a lotion is not really anything special. It's a need for moisturizing the skin. There's nothing really proprietary in all of the lotions, but there are some that, for instance, the Xycrobe technology and others that we produce that very much put a lot of time and research into making sure that the things actually do what we say they're going to do. So let's see. Let's see one more. Okay, so we just talked about the collateral for the lift of education, because I do think that in the future there's going to be courses for the skin microbiome in medical school. I think it's going to happen near term, and I think we're going to be a big part of why it happens. That being said, how important to you is it that Crown developed educational materials like Beauty and the Bacteria, and we can put that on the screen so people can see a QR code or something, because we went through a lot of effort to write those scripts, to film it. I don't think it's Oscar winning necessarily, documentary, but I think it is high end. We put a lot of effort to make it educational as well as entertaining and good looking. How important is that to you for something like Xycrobe? And how important would it be for something like a lotion or a sunscreen? Like, where's the line when it comes to where you think we really need to invest in education?
Well, education's key. Look, first and foremost, innovation is a lifeline to any company, so you have to start there. With innovation is people thinking outside the box. And when you bring that to a market, you have to bring the consumer, the physician, whoever you're marketing to, along for that ride. And with the skin biome, the disadvantage of where we're at is there's a lot of people that have entered the market with not a lot of science.
Yeah.
So they've set the ground of what the consumer believes and, quite frankly, what the doctor believes.
That's right.
And we've had to go back and kind of break those trains of thought and then bring with them, or along with us, the science of really what the truth is in the microbiome. And that's what Beauty and the Bacteria is going to do. Your upcoming book, which you'll probably talk about at some point when you finally finish it in a couple
one more chapter.
Weeks. All those are pieces, and I go back to I was fortunate to launch glycolic acid way back when it first became mainstream, and there was all sorts of quasi science around glycolic acid. Nobody really understood why it worked, how it worked. Consumers just loved it because it worked. And a lot of people went out and talked about pseudoscience. But one of the things that every company I've ever been involved in, we did the work. We did the punch biopsies with glycolic acid, and we showed that it stimulated collagen growth and GAG substance, and it was really doing something. But once you start to do that, we're in a fine line because the FDA then says, well, that's a drug,
Yep.
right? So you have to be really careful.
Yeah. 100%, and that's where I think you're right. It's kind of an art trying to walk that fine line, because to develop something that the FDA regulates as a drug, many tens of millions of dollars, many years, if not more than tens of millions of dollars. Cosmetics, though, much less. But the fact is, there's a lot less hurdle as far as proof. But the thing is, in a physician dispense especially, you can't convince a physician that something works unless you tell them how it works. And so that's the fine line. And then the problem is, even if you can figure out how it works, to market to that then becomes an issue, because then it could be considered a drug. So I think a lot of people don't realize that sometimes companies do have the data. It's just very hard for them to put it out there unless they get caught by the FDA. And then there's some times where they may say something to that vein and not have any data. They're just trying to ride some sort of wave.
We're the masters of using terms like helps,
Yeah.
aids,
Appearance of.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So last question before our final lightning round, and that is there a particular skincare product you would like to create that you've had in your mind but haven't done yet?
Wow. There's so many disease states that I have a high interest in. Rosacea is one of those that I think could be innovated, and I'd love to see, frankly, what Xycrobe could do in rosacea.
Well, we have a clinical study that we just published, and by the time this is out, might have some answers on that.
So that's
Can't
an
claim
area.
rosacea, though.
That's an area that look, it's currently treated by low dose antibiotics over long terms.
Right.
If we could get doctors to stop writing antibiotics, if we had a topical that solved that solution, I think there's a lot of benefit globally to overall health.
And I think, frankly, having talked with a number of physicians at this point about using the skin microbes to actually combat skin diseases versus trying to get rid of them, they've been relatively receptive once you explain to them and show them the actual data. They seem a little shocked and incredulous a little bit, and then when they see it, then they start thinking, oh, maybe that makes sense. So I think that, and I do know there's a few that have stopped writing prescriptions because of our conversations. And so I think it's really, again, like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you can do better. We just didn't know. It was not that physicians were doing wrong. It's just like when they used to bleed people, that's what they thought, because Hippocrates was the one that said you had the 4 humors. You got to get rid of the humors to get rid of disease. So they're like, we're doing the best we can with the knowledge we have. We have different knowledge now, and I think physicians are willing to move forward. They just need to know the knowledge, and that's what education's all about here. So let's move on to the lightning round because we are at the end of our time. But I have 4 more here. And then I have a last question, but we'll do that for lightning round.
So this is for me, or
That's
Brian
for you. No,
Brian
it's for
going to
you.
jump in on
Brian's
this. So.
I agree with your last most of your answers last time too. So
Okay.
chocolate cookies.
Except for good day, mate.
Yeah,
All right.
well,
So big dogs or small dogs?
Big dogs.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna
absolutely
say
he's correct.
I know beagles are the best dogs. Sorry, guys. Favorite type of music or artist?
Oh, Eagles all the way. No.
Okay, interesting. Who's yours, Brian?
I don't know if I actually have one. I mean, Eagles is towards the time of growing
Okay,
up.
stop kissing butt. What's your real?
No, well, anybody in that. No, I'd still probably go. I'm not kissing butt as towards Eagles, but again, I was trying to think about that range as towards.
All right, your time's
Okay.
up. All right. Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Dark. Well, it's better for you.
Sure is. Makes me sneeze, by the way, 3 times. All right. Favorite city, Dallas or JC?
Oh, wow.
You're about to get in trouble.
Yeah, I love them both equally. I actually lived in Dallas before I moved to Johnson City and missed the area, but JC, my home.
Wrong. The answer is San Diego.
Well, I lived
Diego.
there for 18 years, so
Well,
I agree with you
I
on
guess
that.
you brought the Royals. I'm going to say Kansas City.
All right. All right. So to end it out, Jeff, what is next for Crown?
Well, immediately next is launching the best innovation in topical skincare in 30-plus years. We are leaning heavily into globalization of Crown. We're in 39 different countries right now, expanding every year. And really, most importantly, is staying true to our skin tag, or skin line, not skin
Oh, not
tag.
skin tag.
Skin line, which is skin science for life,
Skin
right?
Science for Life.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the whole reason we're here today, Skin Science for Life. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap that up. So thank you for your eyes and your ears. We hope you learned something today. And we thank the Peanut Gallery as well as Dr. Jones for being here with us today, and Mr. Jeff Bedard. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
All right. Again, you can contact us at crownlaboratories.com, or you can just find me on my Instagram at dr.t.hitchcock. That's dr.t.hitchcock. Or if you want to talk to Jeff, you can find him at Instagram at JAB, what was it,
584.
584, or on LinkedIn at Jeff Bedard. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.